Welcome to the Prosperity Profiles Podcast, sponsored by Prosperity Profilers, LLC. They'll help you look prosperous, feel prosperous, and be prosperous. We hope you listen often, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. Now here's your host, four-time #1 best-selling author, speaker, and business coach, Holly Porter.
Hello and welcome everyone to another day at the podcast. We have another super male. We've had so many women guests on this show, and now I'm starting to bring in some males, and it's been great. And we have such fabulous people. Today I have with me, he's not related, but he has the same last name, Dr. Patrick Porter. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for asking me.
Oh, yeah. So we met at an event. I think that's where we met. I saw this fabulous stuff that you had, and just for listeners, I'm super visual, so as I walked by, it definitely caught my attention because number one, they were relaxing on these nice little zero gravity chairs. I think that's what you call them, and we're going to hear all about what BrainTap does. So, you want to give us a little background about you, where you came from, what you've done, what got you here today.
Okay, well, I was brought up actually. My dad was a Silva mind control instructor. We call it the Silva method now. And basically, we used GSR machines, which stands for galvanic skin response systems. And they would literally train you to go to alpha. Back in the late 70s and early 80s, that was the big thing, was how to get somebody to alpha and then use that to, if you want to call it manifest or align your goals. My dad tricked me early in my life to use it for sports. And then I found out that when you use your brain for any one thing, it generalizes and starts to benefit other areas. And that's really what started it on the career. But then in the 80s, I was fortunate enough to become the research scientist really for a group called Light and Sound Research. And I was one of 6 people. We invented the technology called light and sound technology, which there's probably 6 or 10 companies out there now that in one form or another. There's only a couple that are originals. The rest all have my old technology. But ours is called BrainTap because we include 7 different technologies inside of our headset. So when people are listening, so if people can imagine, you can meditate, which is great. But we have a saying here at BrainTap, don't just meditate, evolve. And so what we can do is we can help the brain evolve in its brainwave frequencies. So each brainwave does something different. And each brainwave literally triggers a different neurotransmitter, which our body needs to process, making us feel good or feel bad. And so my background at first was just to get people who were in pain, out of pain, through biofeedback. There was no such thing back then as neurofeedback. Now we have neurofeedback, which we can go a step more. We had something called the mind mirror back then, which measured is somebody in their right brain or their left brain, and can we balance that? And it's kind of the infancy of neurofeedback. Now we know what side of the brain they're in, what region of the brain they're in. They call it brain mapping.
Right.
But the nice thing about what we've discovered over the years is you don't need to know all of that really to get the result you're looking for. We've taken, based on neurofeedback training now, we have these algorithms that train the brain to do different things. So what we've been doing over the years is how can we make it simpler? How can we make it easier? And how can we keep it affordable to the masses? So instead of like some people I know that will sell, back in the days when cassettes or CDs were popular, people were selling certain CDs or cassettes for $100 because they had this special algorithm in it. Well, we know that our algorithm works, and basically you can get it all in one app called the BrainTap Pro app. So you can use that app and you can start getting results. And in fact, to your listeners, if they're kind of wondering what the heck is he talking about, during the show, you can actually get a copy of my book, Thrive In Overdrive, and you can get a link to the app and start using it for yourself. And you don't have to put your credit card in. You can get it for 15 days, try it out, see if you like it or not, and then you can make that decision.
And share what it does for children, because I know I have one myself, and then I also bought one for one of my grandsons.
Right. Well, it does a lot for children as far as keeping them focused. And so let's say you have a child that has attention deficit disorder, and maybe even with hyperactive tendencies, which is ADHD. So what's happening there, we know in the brainwave frequency, is they have too much beta. They have too little beta and too much alpha, which gives them too much energy. You really need about 40% beta and about 30% alpha. And you can get that through that's what they usually do in neurofeedback training. But what we found is that within 30 days of somebody using our equipment, we can get that brainwave back balanced the way that we need it. And balanced in a brainwave isn't like 25%, 25%, 25% or whatever. It's basically looks almost like you're climbing a mountain, where you have this frequency called delta, then you have theta, you have alpha and beta, and then you have one called gamma. So there's actually 5 brainwaves we deal with mostly. And with these children, we can tell them a story, we can have them listen to a 10-minute session, and their brain, not with their conscious mind, but their body responds, because it's something called frequency following response. So think about it like this. If you're listening to beautiful music and your foot starts tapping, and you didn't tell your foot to start tapping, you just started tapping because you liked it, that's because your body liked the rhythm, the cadence, the function. So they found out in the 80s actually, and maybe even as early as in the 70s, that the brain follows they knew that it already did it, but now we had the science that could prove out that the brain actually follows this musical frequency called Baroque classical music. This kind of music is 10 cycle music. So think of it as alpha. So without going to Silva training, without learning all these different techniques, you could just listen to this specific training. Now what we did, the children are actually with light, sound, and vibration now. The brain is being immersed in this pattern, and our brain loves patterns. And really that's why kids like playing computer games, or they're so drawn to computer screens or to iPads or iPhones or Androids. It's really because the brain loves patterns. So what we did is, even with the eyes closed, the brain will love this pattern. It will educate the brain to increase the frequency that you're not as much in, because when you get into alpha, there's a harmonizing effect. So think of it like a tuning fork. For those listeners that know what that is, you can hit a tuning fork, and all the other frequencies, actually, it raises them all up, so the brain knows what to do. So I tell people it's kind of like going to the gym, but instead of doing it for your physical muscles, you're doing it for your mental muscles. You're doing it for your brain. So these children, without knowing it, if you have too much beta, not enough alpha, then you'll become, basically, you can't sit down, mellow out, relax. And it's really a brainwave function. So we can't just tell the brain, hey, stop creating so much beta. They have to have an experience that does it. That's why when kids do martial arts, or they learn yoga really, or breathing exercises, these all are things that can help, that are free. I mean, you have to pay for some of those things, but the BrainTap can do it in the privacy of your own home. So you put it on, and the kids love it, even though the parents sometimes say, my kid's never going to sit for 10 minutes.
Right, that was our challenge.
Right, and even with autism, the thing is, if you have an autistic child, and we were to hook them up to our brain mapping software, we would find out that they are missing the brainwave of alpha. And that brainwave, when they're stimming, you've probably seen kids where they're shaking and they're trying to throw off that energy. That's high beta. They have too much energy. And those people listening that are into energy medicine, you realize the nervous system, it stores up this energy kind of like a capacitor in an electronic circuit. And a capacitor holds this charge until it discharges. Well, these kids can't discharge because they don't have alpha. Alpha mitigates that energy and runs it through our system. Now, then they might flip the switch. Now they're in deep theta. That's the state right before sleep, and they become disassociated. There's been many books written about autistic kids calling them disassociated kids.
Yeah.
And the reason is they can't jump from theta, this almost unconscious state. They're there, but they're not there. You know, it's the old saying, the lights are on, but nobody's home. That's what theta is. It's a really deep contemplative state. It's a very healing state. They want to be there, but the problem with these autistic children is they have this high beta going at the same time they have this high theta, and they don't have alpha. So the brain doesn't work digitally. Like, you can't just jump from beta to theta. You have to go like an analog. It goes, you flow through it. So every night when you sleep, you go through this cycle. With the BrainTap, we literally train the brain to go back through this cycle. And once the brain knows how to do this, we were born that way. Right. So this innate intelligence of our brain takes over, and everything in our universe is built upon light and sound. So sound and frequency and vibration. So we're using vibration as well. There's a whole series of different vibratory frequencies, which now on the internet you can go, hey, I'm going to use this 533 love frequency. Well, we use all of those different frequencies at different times, because not one frequency is any good. You can't just have one frequency. The body, a spectrum of frequencies, and that also has to do with the light frequencies. From the 533 blue that we use, which is a healing light. It's not the 487 blue light that hurts you, like you read about all the time in the LED screens. to the 633 red light that's in our ears, which drives energy and healing through the body through something called photobiomodulation. There's so much going on, but the nice thing about children, all they want is a journey. They just want a trip. And the same thing's true with most adults. And so that's why most of them find after they do the program, they start to sleep better. Now, the listeners, we can't teleport a machine through the computer to you or while you're listening to the podcast, but you can still get all the sound frequencies when you wear your own earphones. So if you want to try this for yourself, just download the app that we'll have here or go get the book, which is at braintaptech.com/thrive. You can read about it, learn about it. We'll give you 15 days free to experience it.
What do you do with people that, like, usually when I put it on, I fall right asleep, but I can fall asleep anywhere. So
Right.
are you still getting the same effects, do you feel like, if you're not?
Yeah, one of the test subjects we did with a group called NeuroInfinity, which is one of our doctors groups. We have over 1,700 doctors using this in their clinic.
Right.
And they're a group of neurofeedback technicians. So the person who ran it, Dr. Barwell, who speaks at our events now, I asked him, I said, who's the most skeptical person that we could test this on? And he said, well, my wife Susan's here, and she doesn't sleep at all. She's totally opposite of you. She's a highly left brain, logical. She's the bookkeeper of the business. And I said, okay, well, that's fine. I said, we put her on it, and I said, Dr. Barwell, she's going to be in alpha at this time. She's going to be in theta at this time. She's going to be back in alpha at this time. And she followed right along with it. And when we were done, he says, what'd you think? She goes, I don't think anything happened. He started laughing. He said, your brain did this whole thing. And I said, every time you do it, there's a cumulative effect. The brain learns to do it better. It's like learning a dance move. The more you do that dance step, the better you get at it. The next time we did it, she actually never sleeps right. But this was at the end of a trade show the second day. So she puts it on, she passes out. Her brain still does everything that I told it to do. And I'm telling Dr. Barwell, she gets up afterwards. It wakes her up because that's what it does at the end of the session. And she says, anything happened? I fell asleep. And he goes, no, your brain did everything. So it doesn't have anything to do with your conscious mind. This is more of a healing and reactionary process. It's not a conscious process. And what I like to tell people is if your conscious mind could really change these things, you wouldn't be talking to me right now. You know, your conscious mind didn't learn how to get out of balance with your brain waves. It was life itself. And usually it's something we call sympathetic survival syndrome. So for those people out there listening, what that means is your nervous system is exhausted. It's tired. You know, people go 10, 12 hours a day. Some of the research we've had over the years, it showed that before we had the light bulb like we have today, the average person slept more than 12 hours a day.
Wow.
You know, now the average person sleeps less than 6. So that's a big change in a very short amount of time. When you're talking about, you know, less than 100 years or so, people have been, you know, our bodies haven't adjusted. So we need some downtime during the day, and we call it rebooting the brain. So when you do it, you literally feel like you've had 3 or 4 hours of sleep, but it can only take as little as 10 minutes. So we're rebooting the brain because it's going through those different brainwave frequencies. And for those listeners that know a little bit more about the brain and what happens, when you're in beta, which is where we're talking right now, the reason that beta brings about good and bad is something called dopamine. And that's a reward neurotransmitter. So when we do, like we're on our cell phones and we get a text, and then we text the person back and they respond, and then that texting back and forth, literally we're getting a dopamine response. This rewards it. Now, if we text somebody and they don't respond, you know, we'll text them again, we don't respond. Pretty soon you might even get angry because you're wondering, hey, don't they love me anymore? Where are they at? What are they doing? You know, and so that dopamine happens. Now, alpha is a creative place. So let's say you're doing something you really love. Let's say you love to play music or draw or write or act or do something or like even golf or whatever it is that you like to do that's your hobby. Yeah. When you're in alpha, you're creating acetylcholine. This acetylcholine literally is like a feel-good drug, and time is suspended. So the brain doesn't create these neurotransmitters. What the brain does is while you're in those brainwave frequencies, it instructs your gut. So your gut-brain connection we have. So what most people don't understand is when the nervous system is so stressed out, so anxious, that the brain can't calm down enough to create these neurotransmitters. So like the people go on these serotonin uptake inhibitors, which, by the way, there's never been a study that proved that they work. So, you know, they've never beat the placebo. In fact, there was a study out that just showed that 75% of all drug trials fail because they can't beat the placebo, which is the sugar pill. So they have to do enough studies that one of the studies can beat the placebo. Now, that could be that one didn't have as many placebo responders as the other. But anyway, they're better off giving out sugar pills than they are all these other pills, because the brain and body connection has more to do with the physiological effect than a psychological effect that everybody's trying to talk about. Now, of course, psychologically, we can trigger our internal pharmacy, but we know if you go through these different brainwave frequencies and be in tune with nature, and for the listener out there, if you want to get to theta, which is parasympathetics, which is a healing state that we want to reach when we're in healing, if you go to a mountaintop resonates, or the frequency of that mountain is typically around 7.4 hertz frequency, which just happens to be theta. If we're in the middle of downtown, any large metropolitan area, let's say it's Salt Lake City or Las Vegas or wherever, or New York, or that city is probably at a frequency of 18 to 22 cycles per minute. That's high anxiety. That's fear, frustration, and anxiety. So, but some people can be in that environment and they can disassociate from it. It doesn't bother them. I've been with people that can't be in those environments. They get so worked up, they get so nervous, so anxious that one person I spent some time with in New York, she lived on a horse farm, and she left New York after 2 days because she was so used to being out with her animals and just being out in nature, and she couldn't handle New York City at all. And it's really because our body is set up to be a frequency response generator. So that's why it's so important the people we're with, the people we're around, and in the books that we read, and the television shows we watch, and or movies we go to, all of these things play into. And the other side effect, Holly, is that people like Bruce Lipton have proven that we can change up to 2,300 different genetic markers just by the thoughts we're thinking, and that meditation relaxation techniques like brain tapping can help to reinforce those positive changes that people want to make by changing their genetic markers, like how they respond to stressful events, or how their food is digested, and all of these other attributes that gene expression plays a role in.
Oh my gosh. We're going to have you on again. I'm going to run out of time, and you got such great stuff. Everyone's probably listening in going, this is amazing. Well, okay. So, oh shoot, I hate to say our time's up, because I love all this stuff, and so if they go to your site, what is the website? We'll post it below, but where is it where they can get more information?
If they go to braintaptech.com/thrive, THRIVE, they can get a free copy of my book, Thrive in Overdrive, and they can get 15 days free. And then if they email us and tell us, hey, I heard it on Holly's podcast, we'll go ahead and extend that out for 30 days. But they just have to email us there so that we know it came from this podcast, and we can assign them in the right place.
Thank you. That's so generous of you. And anyone that doesn't take that opportunity, oh my gosh, you'll love it. It's amazing. And it is. It's especially if you want to get into a meditation practice. This is a great thing to do with so many more benefits than just meditation. So not that there's anything wrong with meditating.
Right. I know you have an event coming up, and the BrainTap will be there. So any that are coming to your event in Las Vegas, we will have a booth there. They'll be able to actually use the headset, which describing it here is like describing atmosphere to a fish. So once they experience it is much better. So get out there to the event in Las Vegas and try it out, and for yourself. But you can go get the book for free right away.
Yeah, that'd be great. And the event is September 28th and 29th, just for those of you listening, if you want to check it out, prosperityevent.com. And we'll link all this information that we're sharing with you right here below in the show notes, and you can come back and listen to it and go check out BrainTap, because it is fabulous, and hopefully we'll see you in Vegas, and you can actually come and put it on and see what it really does.
Okay. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you for having all this knowledge for us today.
Okay, no problem. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you, listeners, for joining us on the show today. And thank you, Dr. Patrick Porter, for being our guest and giving us all of your BrainTap knowledge.
Thank you for having me.
Bye for now, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Prosperity Profiles Podcast, sponsored by Prosperity Profilers, LLC, helping you look prosperous, feel prosperous, and be prosperous. We hope you enjoyed our time together, and we'll visit again soon. You can learn more about Prosperity Profilers by going to hollyporter.com.